Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into, well, a really monumental clash, a huge turning point in history. It's Genghis Khan's confrontation with the massive Islamic kingdom in Central Asia, the one ruled by Shah Muhammad II.
Yeah, and the source material we've got here, it's fascinating. It really gives us a direct window into this whole conflict. Paints a picture of tactics that were, well, incredibly clever on one hand, but also just devastatingly brutal.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive really is to unpack Genghis Khan's strategies, his tactics, but only based on what these sources are telling us. We want to see how he tackled these cities that looked impossible to conquer,
Mm.
those huge walls. And just as crucial, what was the human cost? Sources are pretty graphic about that. It's a close look, really, at how one of history's maybe the most feared conqueror actually operated, seen through these accounts.
Okay, let's get into it then. The story really kicks off after Genghis Khan did something nobody thought possible. He united all those Mongol tribes that used to fight each other, made them one single focused force, and once that was done, his ambition just exploded outwards. Word conquest, and his first big target outside the steppes, this major Islamic empire.
And what really jumps out looking at these sources is how he started things off with the Shah.
Hmm.
He didn't just, immediately send in the horde. No, he started with trade, sent merchants who were also, and this is key, spies.
Hmm.
Feels like a calculated move, right? Testing the waters.
It really does, like a sort of diplomatic or maybe commercial feeler, but Shah Muhammad's reaction, I mean, the accounts make it crystal clear. It was just a catastrophic mistake. The sources describe him summoning the Mongol envoys, and then he has them executed.
Yeah, the source material we have calls it, quote, big mistake, very big mistake,
Hmm.
which honestly feels like a massive understatement knowing what happened next.
Oh, completely fatal, no question. The sources say Genghis Khan's reaction was just pure fury. This wasn't just like an insult, it was a direct challenge. And it unleashed the full Mongol storm.
So facing this unstoppable force, the Shah's armies, they didn't try to meet the Mongols out in the open field. That would have been suicide, playing to Mongol strengths. Instead, the strategy, as the sources lay it out, was retreat, fall back into their fortified cities, relying on those high walls, the deep moats. That was their plan.
And right away, that presents a huge tactical problem for the Mongols. I mean, how do mounted archers, the core of their army, how do they effectively attack cities with walls the sources say were, what, 35, 40 feet high?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where those methods Genghis Khan became infamous for. Well, they come into play. And it's terrifying. The sources call his solution to these defenses typically brutal. He'd already captured thousands of prisoners from other areas. He put them to use in just horrific ways.
Yes, the accounts, they speak of prisoners being forced forward, sometimes literally thrown into the moat, to make a human bridge for the Mongol soldiers behind them. It's grim. And then, maybe even worse, thousands more used as human shield as the Mongols advanced towards the city walls.
The thinking behind it, as you piece it together from the sources, it was brutal, but, horribly effective. Make the defenders inside face this awful choice. Either surrender or basically kill their own people trapped outside.
One account we looked at describes it as completely brutal, even by modern standards. Just unthinkable. But what these sources keep hammering home is that for Genghis Khan, his eyes were solely on world domination, the human cost, the sheer number of dead. It just wasn't his main concern, not at all.
Okay, so even with these terror tactics, they still had the physical problem of the walls. How did the Mongols, who were mainly cavalry, actually breach defenses like that? The answer, according to our sources, gets clearer when we zoom in on one specific city.
Ah, Merv, yes. The sources we have, they call it the jewel in the crown of the Shah's empire. And even looking at the ruins today, you get a sense of what it was. A truly great city, one of the biggest in the medieval world.
It gets compared, in some of these accounts, to London at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of scale, the mix of people, it wasn't just big, it was a major hub for learning, for culture. This was during a real golden age for the Islamic world.
And its defenses matched its importance. Huge outer wall stretching, 10 miles around? And then the main town, inside that, it had another wall, a really substantial one, around 15 feet thick, maybe 30 feet high. The initial feeling, reading the sources, is just, wow, this place seems impregnable.
So how does an army built on horses and arrows tackle that? This is where the sources really highlight one of Genghis Khan's key abilities. He was a fast learner. He wasn't proud. He adopted and adapted military tech for the people he conquered.
Right. His army wasn't just Mongols anymore. It started including skilled engineers, especially guys who knew siege warfare, recruited from earlier conquests. But the big question was still there. Could they actually build something strong enough to smash through walls 15 feet thick?
And according to the Persian and Chinese sources from around that time,
Yeah.
the answer was yes. And the weapon they talk about was Genghis Khan's super weapon, the trebuchet.
Yeah, these sources describe it as a kind of medieval artillery, and they stress that for its time it was absolutely right at the cutting edge of the arms race. One source even says it was like the atomic bomb of its day, just immense destructive power. And the things it threw, usually huge stone balls. Some records mention projectiles as big as a Volkswagen. Can you imagine?
Wow. So using this against Merv's defenses, that would have been the ultimate test, wouldn't it? They had to clear the moat, hit the walls. That's a minimum distance, the sources estimate, of about 85 feet. With these massive scones.
And the sources hint at the difficulties. They talk about testing the weapon, struggling with the range at first. You can sort of picture the scene, right? Engineers tweaking, adjusting, trying to get that distance right.
Yeah, trying to dial in this huge machine to hit one spot on a wall, having to get over the moat first. The sources describe that process, figuring it out.
Exactly. And once they had the range down, the strategy against a wall, according to these accounts, was pretty simple. You just keep pounding, pounding, and pounding away at one spot, likely a weaker section, until it breaks. The sources suggest that once they mastered the range, the trebuchet could do it. It was capable.
But here's where things get a bit murky, specifically regarding Merv. The sources kind of introduce a historical debate. There's a real question mark over whether Genghis actually used the trebuchet there. One ancient source flat out says the city gave up almost right away without a fight.
Right, and then you have the famous Persian historian, Juwayni. He was writing maybe 40 years later, and he gives a different story. He suggests the Mongols just rode around the city for 6 days, projecting this image of unstoppable power, and the people inside, terrified, losing hope, they just gave in, opened the gates out of pure fear.
So which was it? Did Merv fall because Genghis smashed the walls with his giant catapult? Or did he take it using just psychology, just sheer terror? The written accounts leave it a bit ambiguous.
And this is where archaeology becomes so important. It steps in to help solve this kind of historical puzzle. The archaeological work done at the Merv site has found some really powerful evidence. Excavations show, and I'm quoting here, damaged buildings, destroyed buildings with casps actually embedded in them.
And casps, just so everyone's clear, those are the huge stone balls fired by siege engines like trebuchets.
Exactly right. So finding these stone projectiles stuck in the ruined buildings, it clearly shows Merv did suffer a major assault with heavy siege weapons. But the question remains, was it definitely the Mongols who did it?
And the most crucial piece of evidence, really poignant, was found beneath the rubble of these destroyed buildings. Skeletal remains.
Yes, the source material describes this discovery quite movingly. The bones of a young person identified as female, probably early 20s, and right next to her the remains of a very small child, estimated 18 to 24 months old, found together, killed when a big mud brick building collapsed right on top of them.
It's just a heartbreaking image. The sources suggest this may well have been a young mother who dies protecting her baby in the middle of the attack.
And the absolutely critical part for confirming the timing was the scientific dating. They dated pottery fragments found right there with the skeletons.
And the results?
Bang on. They date from exactly the time of the Mongol invasion of that area.
Wow.
So the final conclusion, combining the archaeology and the science, it's stark, it's unequivocal. This was, without doubt, a casualty of the Mongol siege of Merv. The sources, backed by this physical proof, make it clear. The Mongols didn't just scare the city into submission, they smashed their way in.
And what happened after Merv fell?
Well, the account from the historian Juwayni is just almost beyond belief. He describes the Mongols marching the entire population out into the desert nearby, and then systematically killing them all.
The scale he describes is just staggering. Juwayni's account claims every Mongol soldier was ordered to kill 300 people, leading to an estimated total more than 1 million dead just at Merv.
Which really drives home a key point from these sources about Genghis Khan's overall strategy. He wasn't just a military genius, he was a master of terror tactics.
Yeah.
The accounts really stress that he knew exactly how to instill paralyzing fear in his enemies, and he used it deliberately, again and again.
These Persian accounts, they paint this terrible picture of the Mongols having torn across Asia, leaving a trail of bodies. Some estimates put the total deaths from just this one campaign at around 3 million people.
And the sources mention other grim details, too, about the aftermath, noting that these victories, and all the captives taken, provided more and more women for Genghis Khan's, quote, insatiable sexual appetite. It's just a relentless portrayal of destruction. And it leads to that chilling final assessment in the sources, that things are about to get worse when Genghis Khan wipes out a whole civilization.
So our deep dive into these sources, it reveals this incredibly brutal picture of Genghis Khan's methods during this invasion, from calculated political moves and psychological warfare to adopting and using advanced technology like the trebuchet with ruthless efficiency, all leading to just unbelievable brutality and destruction on a scale that's hard to even comprehend.
It really makes you grapple with what conquest even means when the goal, as these accounts show it, seems to be terror itself and the complete obliteration not just of armies, but of, well, entire cultures, entire populations.
Yeah, when the sources describe violence on this level, not as chaos, but as a deliberate, effective strategy,
Yeah.
what does that tell us? What lessons are we supposed to take away from this level of destruction, this kind of warfare, and the human cost described so vividly in these accounts? It really makes you think.